Would you be able to stand up for your personal principles? What if it meant standing up against the Nazi regime? Or let's just say a huge corporation. In 1931, Arturo Toscanini was invited to conduct the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra in Berlin, 1931. Of course, he was expected to perform the Nazi anthem, Hochwasserlied, but he refused. This, obviously, was an act of defiance against the Nazis. And as a result, Toscanini was banned from performing anything in Germany. And that's not the only time he stood up against the Nazis. In fact, just 2 years later, he was conducting the NBC Symphony Orchestra in a performance of Beethoven's Symphony No. 9. There, at the final movement, the symphony includes a text of Friedrich Schiller's poem, An die Freude, or Ode to Joy. Now, this section of the symphony, it's a hymn about brotherhood and freedom. And in this performance, Toscanini and the orchestra performed that symphony with great passion and such conviction that the audience erupted in applause. That particular performance was seen as a powerful message of hope and defiance in the face of Nazi tyranny. Now, he wasn't the only conductor to use his role, his position, to influence his principles and ethics. Leonard Bernstein was an American conductor, a pianist, composer, and he was also the lead teacher at Harvard for music. Now, he was, throughout his life, a passionate advocate for social injustice and inequality. In 1953, Leonard Bernstein was invited to conduct the New York Philharmonic Orchestra at a concert that was sponsored by the American Tobacco Company. Now, Bernstein refused to perform unless that company agreed to remove any references to tobacco from the concert program. Now, this is 1953. Smoking was kind of not taboo, it was actually kind of expected. But his perspective and information on the impact of tobacco and its effect on people was his opinion, his principle, his stand. And he made that against a huge corporation. What did they do? Well, the American Tobacco Society removed all of their elements, and he continued to perform. See, these are just two examples of conductors who stuck to their principles, their personal principles, even when it meant facing significant challenges. Now, why conductors? They seem kind of simple guys. Yeah, they're standing up there and moving their hands around, but their courage, their conviction can be an inspiration to all of us. In addition, they can also be examples that we can use to help implement principle and ethics in our life. Just as a conductor must be able to inspire and guide their orchestra to produce beautiful, harmonious music, doesn't matter where it's at, we can take personal application by implementing principles and ethics in our lives so that we can inspire and lead the people around us with common goals and values that we all hold dear. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but the world we live in is kind of devoid of some of this stuff. In fact, a lot of the deterioration that's happening in today's society is quite often the result of not standing by principles or ethics. So why should we do that today? Well, if we want to live in a world that does stand for something, it's got to start from inside. And we share that experience with others so that we can inspire them to make adjustments and make a stand. Join with me in this episode as we wrap up 2 months of personal development under principles and ethics here at the Move It Podcast. My name is Jared Uraine with the FiveDiamondGroup here at Vice Realty. Thank you for tuning in to this episode, and we will dive a little bit deeper as to how principles and ethics encompass everything we've been covering over the last few weeks and kind of culminate into this personal experience that we want to develop. This is the Move It Podcast, episode 27. Stay tuned. Lex, take it away. Bernstein and Toscanini stuck to their personal principles even when it was difficult. And those were great examples of ethical leadership, not just for us today, but whether we're leading an organization or raising our families. Principles and ethics are important in both life and in business. They give us a framework for making decisions and taking actions that are right and good, even when it's difficult. Now, principles are the fundamental beliefs or values that really guide our behavior and the foundation for our ethical compass. Some of these include honesty, integrity, respect, responsibility. Ethics is the application of these principles to real-world situations, and it's about making choices and taking actions that are in line and consistent with our values and our beliefs. Every one of us are born with these sensations of right and wrong. It's a natural component called our conscience. Now, people who demonstrate this, even though they may not have been raised around these elements, it usually shows up in their actions. And we can either excuse or accuse ourselves, whichever way we want. We can add to that by what we feed our mind, violence or peace, love or hate. Now, to really understand how we can apply these, we're going to understand why they're important first. Principles or ethics are important to us in our life because they really help us live a good and meaningful life. They also contribute to building strong relationships with others. They also allow us to make a positive impact, not just on ourselves, but on the world around us. See, principles and ethics are important not just in personal, but also in our business. Because when we work in harmony with it, it's called integrity. It creates a fair and competitive marketplace. It allows us to build trust with our customers, our employees, our investors. It allows us to protect the environment and promote responsibility. Consider some of the examples of how we can see this, not just in life, but also in business. Honesty. If we were honest with our dealings with everybody, even when it's difficult, like, for example, if we make a mistake at work, do we own up to it, or do we try and cover it up? What about integrity? Even when no one is watching, these are the things that happen behind the scenes when no one is watching you. If you found the wallet, do you give it to them with the money? Respect. Regardless of background, color, or position, being polite and courteous to all customers and employees is a fair right. And fairness. What about dealing with everybody and giving everyone a chance to compete for a job or promotion or even the right to talk? Finally, responsibility. If we make a mistake, do we own up to those being accountable? There are so many ways that we can demonstrate our commitment to principle and ethics. In business, one of the ways we can do that is by adopting a code of conduct that sets forth the standards that are ethical and fair. We can also provide training to employees on making ethical decisions. A culture of openness and accountability is critical to being able to encourage ethical causes as well as maintaining our accountability. And finally, if we support charitable causes and have social responsibility and include those initiatives as a part of our culture, it creates an environment that everybody starts adopting these perspectives. Now, what happens when we put forth effort? We end up creating a loving, supporting, familial environment. Even within our families, it's important to teach them life skills so they can grow up to be happy adults. Here are 5 ways that we can show our commitment to principle and ethics within our family or even our personal selves. Number 1, be honest and truthful. That means with everybody, even when it's difficult. To yourself, to your wife, to your families, share the motives and desires, but be honest. Number 2, be fair and just. Now, this means treating others with respect and dignity and giving everyone a fair chance, but it also means being willing to admit when you're wrong and to make things right. Number 3, be compassionate. This means showing understanding and compassion for others, even when they make mistakes. It also means being willing to help those when they are in need. Number 4, be responsible and accountable. And obviously, this means taking responsibility for our actions and our decisions, as well as being accountable to others for our behavior. Number 5, be forgiving. Now, this means letting go of anger and resentment and giving others a second chance. It also means forgiving yourself if you've made the mistake. How do these principles affect our family and our personal lives? Well, when we are honest and truthful, that allows us to build intimacy within the families. We can trust each other to be honest. We can be more comfortable in sharing our thoughts and our feelings with each other. Obviously, that leads to closer relationships and stronger bonds. Hate what is bad, love what is good. Fairness and justice create a sense of equity and security. When family members feel like they're being treated fairly, they feel more respected and valued. It also allows us to create harmonious, peaceful family environments. It reminds me of Matthew 22:39, to love our neighbors as ourselves. Now, when we show kindness and compassion to each other, it also contributes to feeling supported and loved. And finally, responsibility and accountability. Well, this teaches children a very important life lesson. See, when children see their parents taking responsibility for their actions and their decisions, they do the same. They're a product of their environment. It helps them become more independent and self-reliant adults. Helps them develop critical thinking. Now, we've all been hurt at some time or another, and forgiveness is the element that allows us to heal our past hurts and allow families to really move on. When family members are willing to forgive each other, they can let go of anger and resentment. It allows them to build stronger relationships and create a more positive future for their family. There are so many resources available to help in these areas, but when we start from our personal selves and in our family, we can really start the roots of development in a world of positive principles and ethics. Galatians 5:22 talks about all of the fruitages of the Spirit, and none of those are available unless we apply these things first. And it ends with, and against such things, there is no law. So when it comes to being able to implement positive things in our lives, principles and ethics are definitely the place that we need to start, with our mind and in our heart and in our life. By following these in our personal lives, we can create a more loving and supporting and fulfilling family environment and teach our children important life lessons that helps them be successful, happy adults. Now, what about in business? When we start in the family, it better translate over to business. And in real estate, there are many opportunities to test our ethics and stand on principles. See, realtors take the Realtor Code of Ethics. Now, this is a pledge when they sign up as a realtor to take on the framework and ethics as to how we operate in our business. But the real question is, who's living by these rules? See, if you're a buyer or a seller and you're using a realtor, not just a real estate agent, you certainly have more protections available to you in the transaction. Whereas state regulations help guide how the business is conducted in the state, a realtor will adopt the code of ethics and live by both of those rules. And they agree to working within their business with both of those in hand. As a client, you certainly want to connect with a realtor who has integrity in both their personal and professional lives. Now, I can't speak for anyone else, but what I can tell you is that my goal is to live with integrity both inside and outside of my business. Here are 5 of the most common areas where ethical decisions are likely to be made using the Realtor Code of Ethics. This is typically within the transaction. First, realtors have a fiduciary duty to protect their clients' interests, disclosing all material information and protecting their clients' confidentiality. This means that the realtor needs to decide whether or not there are certain things to share or not share within the transaction. Number 2, providing advice or opinions. Realtors are expected to provide clients with accurate and informed advice, but it also means we have to be up to date with real estate laws and regulations and assess the risk-benefit differentiators for our clients. A realtor is providing advice to a client who is considering buying a property in a flood zone. This is a common question, but realtors need to disclose the risk to the client. It may or may not decide as to whether or not the client wants to move forward with the deal. Things like this are daily interactions that realtors need to be able to manage and understand to be able to work in good faith, not just with your clients, but also with the other agents, because any misrepresentation can be misunderstood as an ethical violation or understood as an ethical violation. A third way that ethical rules apply here is when they're cooperating with other agents within the transaction. For example, if an agent tries to convince the realtor to misrepresent some information on the property, well, we need to decide whether to cooperate with that agent, even if it goes against the code of ethics. Obviously, that shouldn't happen. What about in advertising or marketing? There are certain rules around marketing and advertising to reflect truthful and honest messages in a correct manner. And that means avoiding false or misleading claims, disclosing material information in the property that may or may not affect the buyer or seller willing to purchase. When it comes to advertising, we have to make sure that everything is truthful and honest, and we're disclosing anything that is relevant to the buyer to make an informed decision. Now, finally, when it comes to money, whether it's funds on the property or due diligence in the timeline, all of these processes have an effect on the transaction and could affect the client's ability to perform. Whether it's handling funds for a client or informing them of their timeline or making sure that they act within a certain timeline to perform within the transaction, our goal is to ensure that the client is fully aware as to what they are dealing with at that moment. There should never be a time that our client is questioning what needs to happen. Leonard Bernstein has a quote, and it says that I believe music has the power to change people's lives. It can make us more compassionate, more understanding, more tolerant, but it can also inspire us to take action and make the world a better place. For me, when it comes to working within the principles, I use that as a framework, as a lifetime project, constantly reviewing my progress every day and making sure that I can track and measure those differences. Whether it's in business or personal life, here are 4 different ways that we can implement principle and ethics today. Number 1, identify your core values. What's important to you? What do you believe in? Do you know your why? We've asked this before, but if you don't know what your core values are, you can't guide yourself. Once you know your core values, you can use them to guide your decisions and your actions. Number 2, be honest and truthful in all your dealings with others. Now, this means being honest with yourself as well as those around you as well. And finally, it also includes being transparent and accountable for your actions. This includes our conversations as well as our dealings with others in work and in our personal life. Number 3, be fair and just in our treatment of others. This means treating everyone with respect, dignity, regardless of their background, their color, or their position. It also means being willing to admit when we're wrong in order to make things right. It's going to be difficult sometimes, but when we stand up, there's always a positive benefit. Number 4, be kind and compassionate. Now, this means showing understanding and compassion for others, but even when there's mistakes, it means being willing to help those in need. Being kind and compassionate is not just convenient, but it does help others use our time and our resources to their benefit. Be kind and compassionate to others even when they're not kind or compassionate to you. Remember, it's a journey. This is not a destination. There's going to be times where we slip and fall, and we're going to make mistakes, but the important thing is that we keep on trying, learn from those mistakes, get back up and try again. Living by our principles and ethics, it will be challenging, but it is absolutely rewarding. By living in harmony with these things, we can not only feel good about ourselves and our actions, but we can build stronger relationships with our family, with our workmates, with our community, and more importantly, with the world around us. Take action and try it today. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Jared Uraine with the Uraine Ordonez FiveDiamondGroup here at Vice Realty, and this was episode 27 of the Move It podcast series. We're wrapping up 2 months of personal development. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. If you found this valuable, obviously we'd love to be able to have you share that. Make sure you tune in for any future episodes by clicking on that reminder bell or the subscription link down below. Included in the description is a new feature, and that is podcast suggestions. Love to get your feedback either in the comments or click on the link below. Drop in your remarks. Give us some feedback. Let us know what you'd like to hear in the future. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be cool, like a butterfly.